All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, welcome to Mile of Music Week here on the Newsa-Cast. We're throwing back some of the interviews that we've had that deal with Mile of Music, and this is a fantastic one because you get to hear the backstory of what the Mile of Music was, and that's from the one and only founder, one of the founders, I should say, Dave Willems.
Yeah, absolutely, Tash. I mean, we've known Dave a long time before Mile, and he has one of the most creative minds you're ever going to see, and he's told the story in other places, but he walks us through exactly how he started Mile, how that idea just pretty much developed in his head as he was walking from the Paper Valley Hotel to back to his office about 4 blocks away, and he kind of had that concept just right then and there, and it was incredible to hear, and then to see the growth here. We're in mile 12, but they need help just like everybody else. It's not free. It's expensive to put this on. They take care of the artists, the venues. There's a lot of expenses, and it's tough. They have fantastic sponsors, but you need more than that. And they've started some different foundations and things like that to raise money. So it's important that you buy the merchandise. It's important that you buy a music maker pass, or you go to Gibson's, things like that really, really help. Or they just go to their website. There's so many different ways to help support them, but that's really huge. And Dave talks about that and the need for it, because how cool would to have mile 112, just to have this thing go forever. And Dave thinks it's possible, but it takes a lot. But it's important for this community, because you and I talk about it a lot. It's changed the community, this particular event. It's changed the way we consume music. It's brought different venues to Appleton. It's changed the way bars operate, and live music is just, you name a genre, and there's a band probably playing that night or that week for sure. Not only in Appleton, all throughout any town you go to, but Appleton in particular, the Fox Cities, there's some incredible venues. We talk about them all the time. And it's just some incredible bands and musicians playing those venues. Yeah.
And you know what? I think one of the cool things that we talked to Dave about is just what this happened from the beginning to where it is today. And we've talked to some of the musicians. We had a chance to interview them, and they love coming back to this because it's unlike anything else. The way they're treated by what the Mile of Music people have put together is incredible. They're not treated like this at other places. And whether it's from just our community embracing these musicians and making it part and their live shows being incredible. I mean, we have bands coming back all the time. There's some that I want to see again. Stay Outside, the Horace Green Band from Oshkosh is fantastic. I just saw them a couple weeks ago at Ledgestone. Hillary Reynolds is amazing. Post-Sex Nachos came last year. They're a fantastic band. Bermuda Search Party is fantastic. Tay and the Neighborly is awesome. There's Arts Fishing Club, another local. They're out of Nashville now, but Arts Fishing Club, one and only Wild Adriatic is coming back. They're a huge success story from previous Mile of Musics as well. So there's so many bands that come back and want to come back to this, and Dave does a great job of explaining what some of those are. I know, Joe, you're looking forward to some bands also. What do you really want to see?
Well, it starts for me, Tosh. We talk about it with Dave is with the app, because I'm sure anybody that's listening to this, you have the app, and that's what brings you around. So what I'm most looking forward to is what I don't know yet, because every single year I find bands that just, last year was Pajamas, and I still listen to them. They came up on my playlist today. I listened to a tune, and the year before that it was Kendall Street. There's been some bands that I never expected. So the only thing I expect is I'm going to find another 1, 2, 3 bands like that. But
absolutely,
you named a lot of them, Tosh. Tay and the Neighborly, and the folks that we talked to on the Newsa-Cast, certainly going to go back and support those, those folks. But Valley Fox, they're a local band. They're really good. They've got an incredible fiddle player. I've seen her play locally. I can't remember when they play, but they're out there. Check the app. as I kind of look, I think you and I talked about this. It might have even been in Dave's episode. Where one of my favorite days of all of Mile is when I sit down on the back porch and I just start listening to Spotify and some of the bands, but then I just kind of lay out my schedule, knowing full well that there's no chance the schedule will hold, because I'm one that likes to put a schedule in and then I just can't follow it. But there's a couple of markers that I'm going to hit. I know I'm really looking forward to Saturday night. Some really cool people are in town that we're going to, start with Tay and the Neighborly and then wherever the night goes. So I'm looking forward to kind of the unexpected of that night.
Absolutely.
Thursday is fun to just kind of take in Mile and just kind of understand again how the layout is. And
you got to go down on Thursday. You got to go to Riverside or Rookies and see Diggstown at Rookies.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there for sure.
They play from 6 to 7. And then you can head down to Jones Park and you can check out all the music down. I mean, everything's going on Thursday night already, but make sure you check out our house band that we love and we totally support as much as we possibly can. Diggstown, they're fantastic.
Tasha found another one. I forgot. Remember we interviewed Corey Krieger. He is in Il Genesi and they're playing at 8:10 at the bar on Thursday. I forgot about those guys.
Absolutely,
if you like rap and hip hop, they're a great band.
Yeah, for sure.
Modern Joey, that's a good band.
Modern Joey out of Milwaukee area, fantastic. Well, we don't need to talk anymore. We know you want to hear Dave because it is a fantastic interview, and maybe you're new to this and you stumbled across this and you want to hear some of the history of how Miles started and hear Dave talk about it. It's fascinating. Without that vision, we wouldn't have the Mile of Music. So sit back and enjoy. And, support this Mile of Music, but also support this podcast and tell everybody about it. And we have, Joe, 80 some episodes?
Yeah, I think
ranging all local people from high school sports to college sports to coaches to business people. You name it, we have it. And it's all about Northeast Wisconsin. So take a listen and enjoy.
So, I mean, do you like me? Like, what's your favorite kind of music? What do you like?
But it's cool to hear you say music and, sports, that kind of almost like music more than sports. When I know, of course, your background, Joe, and both, as you're both into sports. And of course, I worked for the Packers back in the day when I was in college. So I grew up, within not too far from Lambeau Field, not in the shadow, because that would have been closer over by Lambeau, but I grew up by West High School. And so I grew up and, idolized and had a chance to meet some of the Packer players when I was a younger kid, because my dad, worked a second job for one of the board of directors of the Packers at the time. And so every now and then he'd run into a player or two while he was doing odds and ends at her house. And then he would bring me along if he knew he was. So, that's how I met Bart Starr when I was 9. But then I ended up working for Bart when I worked for the Packers for a couple of years in college. So sports and actually the whole concept behind Mile of Music, and I'll get back to your question on the music piece, but the whole concept behind Mile of Music came from a walk that I had after leading a meeting in downtown Appleton with a bunch of the businesses who were just basically had one challenge, and that was, can we come up with an event that would put people in our businesses? And actually the meeting was about all kinds of stuff, and we did a SWOT analysis to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of downtown, and I did that for ADI. And in the course of the conversation, what came up was how strong the walkability was for downtown Appleton, which, of course, having been a downtown guy and worked downtown and lived near downtown, I always knew that. And in that conversation, several of them I think we had just come off of the big event in downtown Appleton, Oktoberfest, and that's a little bit tricky for some of the businesses. Oktoberfest is saying, how can we come up with a business that puts people into our businesses, not out on the street? And so, as I was walking back from the meeting, we had the meeting up in the leg lamp above the bar. As I walked back, I went past a couple of the sports bars, and I thought, well, we could do a sports legends thing. We could put sports legends into the bars, 15, 20 bars, and have this really cool thing, kind of like my experience was at years before at South by Southwest. And I thought, well, wait a minute, why would we do sports legends? Why wouldn't we just go ahead and do music? And so could we do kind of a mini version of South by Southwest, maybe more like it was in its first 5 or 10 years. Yeah. And so that's kind of how the whole concept came about. By the time I got back to the office, 4 or 5 block walk, 6 block walk, I kind of had the idea gelled in my head. And then it was like, is it just me, or is this a good idea? And so I talked to a couple people at the office right away, and before I even got the sentence out, they were like, we got to do this. And so that's kind of how it evolved. And then I had to talk to my brother, who was my business partner at the time, and say, so I have this idea to do an event that we're probably going to spend $500,000 of marketing agency time on. Probably not going to make any money, but it's going to be really cool for downtown. And he lives in Green Bay. So I had that little hill to climb, right? Because he wasn't as vested in Appleton. He is and was, but and so he immediately said, well, first I think he said something like, so chances are if I say no, you're probably still going to do it, right? And I said, probably. And he said, no. He said, I'm just kidding. He said, I think this is a hell of an idea, and we should just go all forward. Because he said, we're not getting any younger, and if we want to do something that can change the community and leave a legacy and stuff, we might as well do something like this. And he said, geez, what's better? And he was a rock and roll guitarist in the 60s, was in a Beatles cover band up in Green Bay. But, again, huge music fan, bigger music fan probably than I am. But, I've always liked music. I've spent some time after college. I worked for a company in Milwaukee called GMR. We did we did sponsorships for music and comedy for Miller Brewing Company and a few other companies around the country and eventually around the world. And I was the PR director for that company. So that's when I went to South by Southwest. Actually, when I went to the second South by Southwest and the third South by Southwest. So that gives you an idea how old I am, but young at heart, right? That's the key. I always do say I wish I'd kind of been in a position to started 10 years earlier. Of course, I was right in the middle, like a lot of our music fans. We always talk about the fact that our music fans tend to be like younger and single, and then married in their 20s, and then all of a sudden, along come kids. And then it's like, we'll probably lose them for 15 or 20 years, and then we're going to get them back. And then we have them back, and then we have them all the way into what I call the I Can Still Go Out Damn It Club era, which is where many of our fans are now. That many of the fans come to Gibson Community Music Hall, they're tickled pink to be going out. And I had a guy tell me one, and I know you've only asked me one question. I'm still sorry about that. I kind of make a living talking, so I apologize for that. I had a guy come to to a show one night, not at Gibson. This was years ago, so about 5-6 years ago. It was, I think we had a show at Outer Edge or something, and he walked in and he just was beaming, and I said, boy, you look more happy to be here than usual. And he said, I'm just glowing, he said, because I left the house and my college daughter was home, and she and her friends were playing a board game at the kitchen table. And I was walking out and it was 10:30, and they said, where the heck are you going? And I said, I'm going out to see some live music. And I closed the door behind me. He said he kind of felt like he was turning the tables on him. And I said, well, that's one of the best stories I've heard. And it still is one of the best stories. Absolutely. Music is language. And I'm learning that we talk about sports and all that, and I still love sports, but the older I get, the more music just speaks to everything about me. There's something different about it. And I think that's why Miles is so successful. You said a ton there, and it's funny that you tell the story about how Miles started, because it's literally the one question I wanted to ask you is, that creative act, that idea that you have in your head when that in that walk, when you just created Mile in your head, is that basically how you're usually creating your events, your ideas? Do they come to you like that? Does it just pop in your head and it's almost a vision that you just see it unfold, what it is, and then you spit it out of your head? Yeah, I think, and that's kind of how we've always done with the agency, the marketing firm. And then, we've always been a marketing and an events firm, Willems Marketing Events. And we used to be just Willems Marketing. We changed to Willems Marketing Events when Mile came along. But we always did do a lot of events, and we always prided ourselves really about experiences. And so when people, going back to your other question about music and being a music fan and what type of music and so forth, and my answer to that would be I do like all kinds of music. If I probably was had to head to a desert island and have to choose one genre of music, it would probably be folk rock / rock. The guitars, the drums, rock and roll, but probably not the heavy stuff, a little more toward the folk rock side of it, singer-songwriter stuff for sure.
Have you discovered the Grateful Dead?
It's interesting you bring them up because I haven't listened to a lot of Grateful Dead.
Life-changing.
I really haven't over the years, not on purpose. It wasn't kind of a lane I went in. I kind of tended to go more in the lane of Mellencamp back in the day. Springsteen, certainly the Rolling Stones, but not heavy Rolling Stones. I couldn't tell you probably more than 15 Rolling Stones songs, but I really enjoy them. I enjoy the bands that we've had at the Mile that have kind of emulated the Rolling Stones a little bit or have used them as their icons and so forth. And that's always a lot of fun. It's one of the reasons when we were doing tributes, we used to do at the beginning of the Mile, we used to do tributes first several years. One of the sets of the entire festival, the only one that wasn't original was a tribute set. Usually we did a Tom Petty one year. You may remember that. We did a Rolling Stones one. We did a Prince, Bowie one the year that they both passed. We really liked that. All of these bands, all these original music performers, they're patterned after they started by listening to other artists, and many of them started as cover artists, obviously, and then eventually started to write their own music. But if we're truly going to be an original festival, we have to be 100% original. So that's where we're now kind of looking at, with Gibson and under the umbrella now, and we've got that place exactly the way we wanted. It looks great. It sounds amazing. Well, so now there's just a lot of cool stuff we can start to do there. We'll start to do some tribute shows or some quasi tributes. But when we do tributes, it's always going to be not during the festival. The festival will always be 100% original. When we get, because the artists all sign a pledge when they show up at the PAC and they check in, and we have an artist check-in space, which we do, and they get all their stuff and they get their packet and they get their check, which covers all their sets for the weekend and so forth. They get paid ahead of time. We tried the first year to pay them at the end of the festival. It was a nightmare because you had to corral them all. You had to track them all down. You know what I mean? We had several artists, 2 or 3, I think, that left town without getting paid, and we felt awful. So we said, we reached out to them. They were literally on the road, and we said, okay, we're never doing it that way again. And so then we just felt, but we also got to know the artists that first year. That was the first fest we had done, and we said, you know what, these are really, really cool people. We underestimated just how great some of these humans are. And so we said, you know what, we can trust them. And so by year 2, right away, we were already giving them their checks when they showed up. And that's never been a problem, obviously. And but when they check in, there's also a form that basically says this is an original music festival, which means we want you to express your original aspect of being an artist. And we want you to only play your original music. And we are pledging here to only play original music. Every year we have a couple, 3 that somehow sneak in a cover, and oftentimes they get shouted down by the crowd, which is they always joke, I got shouted down. I started to talk about playing a cover, and they went, no way, that kind of thing. And then there were a couple years ago, we had a couple artists that both, for whatever reason, both played Ohio, the protest song. And did amazing versions of them, but that's not what we're about. And so we had to out to them after the fest and just say, we love you. It's not a penalty. We're not going to not have you back because of it, but you just got to understand that when we say no covers, no matter whether you performed it yourself or not on your latest album or whatever, we mean no covers and stuff. And so, but anyhow, I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but we have really focused on that piece. But so I worked for that company that we did some neat stuff around, and I went to that South by Southwest, and I saw how kind of at that point it was really a music conference. It was it was mostly the daytime stuff. And then they had what they called showcases, and they called them showcases, which I think was probably where it really started to circulate as a name. They called them showcases because I think they had two different lengths. It was maybe 25 and 50 or 20 and 40 or whatever it was. Might have been a half hour and 60 minutes. And based upon where you were at in the music industry, because these were almost all unknown. And what they did is they said to independent artists and indie musicians, come to Austin. We'll get record executives there. You'll have record executives, agents. We're going to have a conference during the day with all these people. And then at night, we're going to have showcases, and they're going to be there watching your show. And by the way, come and I believe this is true, come and play for free. Make your way to Austin, figure out a way to get here, and we're going to have the right people watching you. And so that's how South by Southwest came about. So when I went there, it was second year, third year, we had a little 10 by 10 booth. It was for Miller Genuine Draft. We had a Miller Genuine Draft band network. And so we had bands from around the country that were popular in their own markets. And so they were performing, we had this network that went around the country. And so we worked with the distributors and advanced the shows and gave the bands promotion and stuff. It was a cool program. And I was the PR guy. So I was calling all the music critics around the country. Back then, believe it or not, everybody had a music writer. I mean, everybody. It was a pretty cool deal, pretty cool gig. But it gave me a chance to see South by Southwest. And so all those years later, because that would have been 26 years later after, again, raising kids and all that stuff. Now I'm in a position where I could say, as I'm walking back, we could make that work. We could make that happen. And we have the downtown for it. Fortunately, I had worked so much with downtown. I had done a number of events in downtown. I started to do music. I had done a couple of charity shows with Corey Chisel, and we had that. And so I could see from the marketplace that Appleton was ready for the experience and for experiences. And I had worked on the book festival as an agency. We had helped the book festival doing pro bono work. As an agency, we always tried to give about 25 to 50% back of whatever we did every year. We did all of and continue to do ADI work for a significant discount. That was a way for us, not being a lucrative industry, not being where I'm raking in the dollars as a business. It was a way for us to, while we went along as a business, to also give back to the community. So we would do some cash and we'd do some in kind. And so we really had a neat opportunity with thinking back. As I walked back, I thought, this is something we can do. And it was really, it's really about the experience. And for me, when people ask me, are you a big music fan? I get that asked a lot at Gibson as people are walking out the door because they come over to compliment on how things look. By the way, the number one, again, tangent, the number one comment we get is how nice our restrooms are.
Yes. Hey, what is that room upstairs? It's just beautiful from the avenue.
Yeah, the folks who own the building, they own the building and they live upstairs. And they have built really cool space upstairs. It runs from front all the way to back. We get a fair amount of people come in and ask how they can get upstairs. They were trying to want to make. We always joke with them and say, well, yeah, you just go, and then we stop and say, no, it's a private residence. So, but I told Lisa recently, I said, we're going to start sending people up there, it's a cool, it's a cool space. And they're very beautiful. Big downtown proponents. Yeah. They're big advocates downtown. And she's on the Appleton Downtown Incorporated board and stuff. So, we're lucky, that quite frankly, folks like Ben and Lisa, but other folks too, before them, those are the reasons why we created the festival, is because I knew, having been entrenched in the community for so many years, having seen it from all different angles. And I always said back in the day when we get interviewed for different things, I would say, when there's an opportunity, you can get people to come to the table, the business community, the nonprofit community, the municipalities. And so we're very fortunate, very lucky. And so it takes a special kind of community. And I'll tell you this, the artists have already recognized that. They know that this, as much as people hope or think that it could be created in other areas around the country, it can't be created everywhere. It could be created in other parts of the country. It just can't be created everywhere because it takes a special kind of dynamic for this to come together, because as I say, it takes a village to raise a music festival like this. And when we sat down after the Rolling Stone article a year ago in September, when that article hit and all the media wanted to do interviews, and I said to the team, I said, we need to sit down and think about how many pairs of hands actually go into creating this festival every year? And it's about 3,000 pairs of hands or more. It's a festival in and of itself that kind of makes the festival happen. And that's probably the part that we're most excited about and most proud about, is the fact that so many people have embraced it. They understand it. We know that, as it turns out, that this is just something we initiated, but in reality, if we're all lucky enough and we all work hard, and quite frankly, if we have a successful couple of years here of fundraising through the new nonprofit that's been established, if we can get all that done, it'll be around for a long, long time. And it'll be our version of a much different event, but our version, in my mind, just, and happy to say it publicly, a better event than, say, a Summerfest or some of those. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to say that to create controversy. I'm just saying from the standpoint of genuineness and authenticity and what it means to this smaller community. I think from a brand perspective, I think this has helped. It's become a brand that Appleton can hang its hat on and be proud about. And when I have folks approach me, like I did at the intersection a couple of years ago, right by the city center, and a couple of our regular music fans were on their bikes, and they had a couple of people behind them. And if I remember correctly, there were a couple of little people attached to those bikes, and they said, "Hey, Dave, this is our daughter and her husband and our grandkids, and they just moved back to Appleton, and they said one of the reasons they moved back to Appleton was Mile of Music, and their comment was that Appleton is cool now." And obviously that makes you feel as good as anything could when you just saw how beaming they were with the fact that they were out on a bike ride with their kids and their grandkids. And so that stuff happens all the time. I'm happy to report and humbled to report that people approach me all the time at Gibson, about 6 of them the other night, and just want to talk about how proud it makes them feel when these artists come to Appleton. 700 musicians last year, 1,200 acts, different bands, solo, duo, trios, bands have come to Appleton over the first 10 years of the festival. 1,200, including about 70 or 60 or so, 80 maybe, music education presenters. So between the artists and the music education presenters, that's 1,200. And we're actually coming out with a poster soon. It's going to be a large 30-inch wide by 45-inch tall poster that'll be the first 10 years. It's basically 10 miles of good vibes, and it's going to have all 1,200 artists listed on it. Wow. And so it's going to be pretty cool, and that'll be a souvenir poster that people will be able to purchase. And we're just going to print them as people purchase them, because it's larger than the average poster.
Yeah, sure.
But putting that together and seeing the names on it, and it was pretty exciting to see, and we're really happy. But it comes back to the experiences, and that's what I'm about. Is I really enjoy, and it doesn't have to be always behind the scenes. I'm happy to get out there in front on the stage and those types of things. I don't have a issue with that at all. And I feel like many of us who helped to create the festival are part of this, and so they should get out in front and so forth. Not everybody likes doing it, but the reality is it really is about creating. What I really like is creating experiences, and I love seeing people enjoy those experiences. A little bit of that kind of a little bit of that magic of creating stuff that people get excited about.
Dave, some of the few people like Steve Jobs, Walt Disney, Elon Musk. I mean, all of those guys are about the experience. Before we ever knew we needed an iPhone, Steve Jobs knew we needed an iPhone, that experience. And that's exactly what you're doing. And it shows. That's why I love being from Appleton because of Mile of Music. It's no different than being from Austin in the South by Southwest. It's those big, you feel connected to those festivals. I mean, I take that week off every year for work. It's in the books. I'm off because it's just what we are. And Appleton is that. One of the things I love about Mile so much is it's how it's stitched into the community, but it's where the events take place, where you have the stages located. I mean, they're morphed into Lawrence, they're morphed into alleys, they're morphed into these corners and that corner. And the indoor venues are great, but I absolutely love the creativity of the outdoor venues. They're just fantastic.
Yeah, I think the mantra there is just simply, and there are a couple of festivals I haven't been to them. I don't know them by very well, but I know that in talking to some of our artists locally and other folks early on in the festival, Corey provided a lot of input, to some of the ideas of things he had seen that he liked and didn't like, and he always would say, let's, if we can treat the artists. Because my comment was to him, I remember early on in the process where we had a team that we put together that helped. Gene Dachin was one of those, other folks. And then, in the early going, we had volunteers that stepped forward to book that first festival. Kurt Kempen stepped forward as a volunteer, eventually became a contracted person and then an employee. As the initial booker of the festival, But we all pitched in and did different aspects of that. But, I remember Corey saying, I mentioned to him, I said, so we're not on the way to anything unless you like football. We're not on the way to anything really. So how do we get people to get up here to Appleton? How do we make this happen? We were just brainstorming. And one of the comments he made during that process was, I can tell within the first hour or two of going to I think he said it, going to a festival or going to a venue, whether I ever going to want to go back again. I can tell right away how I'm treated, how the people are, how the owner is, how the manager is, how the stage hands are. He said, I can tell right away whether I want to go back or whether I need to go back. And so he said, if we come up with a way to treat the artist extra special, he said that'll help. And we're taking notes, and then we were brainstorming, and it didn't take us long to think about the fact that we need to treat the artists. It's strategic. It's also how we all want to do it. We all want to be good people, and we know that this can be an oasis. This can be a Shangri-La and an oasis for artists. It's proven to be that. So when you mentioned, we put the artist care program together, we did all the rest of the stuff. Artists have been paid from day one. We've been gradually being able to pay them more, but more importantly, we put this amazing artist care program together with the dental care and the hearing care and the melanoma screenings and all those types of things. We've caught 2 melanomas over the years. Both artists said we've saved their lives because they would have never gone in. They were in their early 30s or mid 30s and would never have gone in and stuff. And whether we did or didn't, the idea that we helped them out is huge. And so that artist care program is one of the reasons Rolling Stone wrote that article and talked about how Appleton is doing it right. And that's a tremendous endorsement for us all. And we should all feel proud about that. And that's, I've always been kind of more of a, let's do this together. And we needed it to be done together. It's so as we've gone through it, it's just been really cool to see it evolve in many ways the way we had thought it could and would, but obviously we didn't necessarily assume when we started this thing that it was going to be this thing that was going to be as popular as it is. Now that we've been through a decade, we've put everything we bring in, we put it back into the festival. Every year there's new hiccups, there's things that get in the way of us getting to the next level of financials. So we need to spend the next 3 or 4 years, but really the next second decade has to be about solidifying it financially. It has to come up with a different type of financial model. We have to be better at sustaining it. We have to get more people to give a little bit, more people to give more than a little bit, the folks that want to see it continue, because in order for it to stick around and stay in my mind, now, somebody else may come in. There may be, as we evolve the nonprofit, maybe there's a board of directors that says we want to do it differently. I don't think so. I think right now everybody wants to continue to have it be this free and accessible festival. The minute you start charging something for a wristband for the weekend, now you change expectations completely. Now you, Joe, as a fan, coming to it now. Right now, you might, after going to 3 venues at 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, not be able to get in, right? So you go to your 4th one, and now you go online and you might share with a friend, hey, there's so many people downtown, it's awesome. And I just had to go to my 4th venue before I could get in, and guess what? I went in and saw this band at the Bent Keg, and they were better than the band I was planning to go to see.
Right.
How you do it, and you're excited about it. But now, once you've paid $25 for the weekend wristband, or $50 or $500 like some of these festivals charge. And I'm just using one example here of the expectations changing. Now, when you go to that 4th venue and you still can't get in, what does your social post end up looking like now? It's like, hey, I paid for this darn thing, And I just went to 4 venues and I couldn't get into any of them, so right away it starts to shift. Right. And so,
Sure.
so that's one thing. Second thing is it changes our conversation with our agents and our artists and so forth, because it's no longer a free community festival, which it is now. And the third thing is for those venues who think that that's a good idea or whatever. Well, once they start having 50 people in their venue at 9:00 at night, not 150 or 200, because now you're making a choice as someone who's paid to come. You're now deciding where you're going to go a little bit more closely, right? And so it would change the dynamic significantly. And so I think that's something we will look at every year, because ultimately, in bottom line, we have to have a stronger financial model. But I don't know that that's the answer. I'd like the answer to be getting to more and more people, more and more companies to say, we like it the way it is. We like how authentic it is. We like the fact that people around the world, and this is true, musicians and fans around the world talk about Appleton because they've pulled off something that's unique in the sense that they have this incredible multi-venue festival, indoor and outdoor. When it rains, we still have a festival. It's happened a little bit. Some of the bounces out of the step, but we still have a pretty amazing festival with 20 venues operating at the same time with live music. But the reality is we want them to also feel like what's unique about this thing is that everybody can get to it, and it's accessible and it's free and it's original. I think the bottom line is in my original, and that's not any slam against any musician who's not an original musician. I think they're talented. I think they're great. I remember having a couple of the cover bands say to me, they weren't real happy with me after the second or third year, because and I said, I think this is going to bring everybody up in terms of, I think you're going to have more gigs than you've ever had before. I think it's because everybody's going to be thinking about music. And about a couple of years later, one of them came up to me and said, we've had more gigs than we've ever had. We're enjoying this more than we ever. People seem to be in tune more, and that's a pun, than they ever were. So I think it has helped that way as well. And I'm glad about that, because it was never started to be punitive to anybody. It was just, you have to stand for something. And what we stood for was the idea that we were going to bring in singer-songwriters who created songs to have a festival.
You can find every episode on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or YouTube, or any podcast app. Follow our social accounts for show updates, local events, inspirational content, or simply for fun. Follow us on Facebook, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, or Instagram. Please contact the Newsa-Cast to share your story, offer a suggestion of a particular athlete or sport, or even an idea, or just simply say hello. Newsa-Cast@gmail.com.
Dave, going back to that first year and thinking about the bands that you wanted to come, or trying to get a hold of bands to come to Appleton for this first festival, how did that take place?
Yeah. We may have talked about this before. I know I certainly have talked to a number of people about it, but we've always said, and it's true, that first year putting the festival together, we had a lot of local and state and regional bands that we brought in, and they were accessible because Kurt, who was booking, knew them from having done a couple of events that he had done previous, where he was able to actually had them in his phone and stuff like that. But anybody that we tried to reach to outside the state, there were a handful that we had to enlist Corey for his help, to basically just say, hey, try so-and-so and so-and-so because I know them, or maybe his agent at the time, his booking agent, knew some artists, so we were able to reach through his booking agent, because we had to go to people that we knew that were willing to give us a chance and come here. We did get a handful of others, but it was pretty tough sledding that first year to get anybody to call us back. Booking agents wouldn't call us back because, you get this. I mean, I see it all the time at Gibson. I see stuff come in. I see names come in. We get things into our Gibson email from artists, right? And some of them have very unusual names for the bands or the individuals or whatever. And you look at it and you go, is this legitimate? Is it not legitimate? So at the time, we were talking about it as a group, and we said, well, it kind of makes sense, because here you are reaching out to a booking agent who books, and then you're saying you're a mile of music. And it's like, well, what the heck is that? And all of a sudden it's come out of nowhere. Right. And it's like, we're going to do this festival, and we want you to come and play it. And we can't pay a lot of money, but we're going to treat you really well. You're going to have a great experience. The town's going to embrace you. That's our bet. Blah, blah, blah. So come and give us a try. So first year, to answer your question, that didn't fly all that great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't, we didn't have a lot of penetration. By year 2, it was already not even an issue. And by year 3, we were taking phone calls, and agents were reaching out to us and saying, we have our whole lineup. We have 26 artists. Would you like them all? That kind of thing. It was because the artists that came back and went back were literally texting in their cars on the way back saying, hopefully they weren't driving, but they were texting in their cars on the way back saying, this thing was great. We feel validated. We feel like this is the reason we started to play music. They were giving the Jamie Kent message of Famous in Appleton, right? With the song created. And so that really, really took hold by like year 4 and 5. And I always said to Mayor Hanna at the time, and say it to Mayor Woodford too, but I said to Mayor Hanna, this has been a cool thing for me to see, and I can relay it to you because we'd have a meeting every year like I do with Jake now too. But Tim and I would get together and we just talk about the year, how it went, talk about next year, anything different that we're going to be doing, anything different we might need from the city, anything we got to work on together, because we don't just get stuff, that we all have to work together on this and they have to agree to it. And we would basically walk through, and it was a neat process. And I would always say to him, here's what I'm hearing down from Nashville, which would be what I call that Appleton-South. Some people talk about we're Nashville North, but I actually call Nashville Appleton-South because a lot of our artists are in Nashville and they talk about Appleton when they're in Nashville. And they do it all the time. They have better chances to play meaningful shows in my mind up here in Appleton, or as good a chances as they do down there. And so I said, it's progressed from being the very first, hey, there was this festival up in this town in Wisconsin. I forget the name of the town, I forget the name of the festival, but I heard about it and it was apparently pretty good last year. And then it went to, have you played, that festival in Wisconsin? Then it went to, have you played Mile of Music? And then it went to, have you played Appleton? And that's where it's at now, is the artists talk about, have you played Appleton? Whether it's one of the venues that's doing music year round, whether it's one of our special Mile shows, whether it's the festival itself, they talk about it all the time. And I remember Adrian and Meredith telling me that when they were at a coffee house in Nashville, the artists at the 3 tables over, who they had not met yet, was starting to talk about Appleton, Wisconsin, or they were talking about Appleton, Wisconsin. I'm sorry. And an artist came over from 4 tables over and said, I played Appleton last year. I'm so-and-so. And then they got to know each other. And then another artist came over and said, are you guys talking about Appleton? They said, yeah. And he said, I haven't played there yet. Tell me about it. Well, that's pretty special. That's pretty cool. And I was going to say to you before, Joe, that's the opportunity we have in front of us. Is we have an opportunity. When you referenced Austin, you referenced Nashville, so you're exactly right. We have an opportunity. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I was referencing this to the Convention and Visitors Bureau the other day. We have an opportunity right now for Appleton to be, and for Mile to be Mile 365, as an opportunity to be around all year round, because we connect music fans to the 1,200 artists that have played the festival. And we're working on that right now. There will be a conduit for them to have that connection at some point.
I love that you said that. Was actually one of my questions. Was I was going to phrase it, is Appleton turning into a Nashville? And I mean, you touched on that. So that really is happening, right? I mean, this is an extension of Nashville. Are the artists, I mean, are they coming up here at all? Is there visions of them recording and collabing together and actually maybe even living in Appleton and easily commuting between the two places, and then having places like Gibson Hall and things like that to actually play gigs?
Yeah. So I think just a slight modification to that would be and I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail because I don't want Nashville to feel like I'm going after them or something, because I'm not.
Right. No, I get that.
There's areas in Nashville, East Nashville, other areas of Nashville that are evolving and bubbling up to be these really cool spots. And it's where the original music artists get to hang and do stuff. the original music artists don't have as much opportunity in Nashville unless you get to a certain level, right? So it's you're basically playing. For what I saw when I was there, the couple times I've been there, you're playing on Broadway. You're playing cover stuff. You're playing for tips. You're doing that. This is so. One of the reasons they love coming here is because they can bring some of the ideas from these coffee shops in these other burgs around Nashville. They can bring the writers' rounds. They can bring the in the rounds. They can bring the song swaps to Appleton, and we love it, and people love it. And so it really would be about. It's going to sound kind of goofy and maybe a little egotistical and so forth on behalf of the community. But I think Appleton just needs to be Appleton in the music scene, and it's already evolved. And so these artists are coming here saying, you guys have no idea what you've created here and how, and already. Now, are we 365? Are we everywhere? Do we have 40 venues? No. Do we have, but I always have said, if you have 5 or 6 quality venues and they're doing it right, and they're doing it with the right motivation, and they're doing it passion first, maybe money second, this will be around for a long time, but it'll become unique and distinctive and very different from Nashville, very different from Austin. We're probably a little more like Austin than we are like Nashville, but the artists tend to come from Nashville because a lot of the artists moved from Austin to Nashville, got squeezed out by the tech industry, making things so expensive down in Austin, in that area. Some of that same stuff is happening in Nashville. I don't necessarily see them necessarily moving to, I think we're going to become like, you know, how everybody goes down south during the winter time. And I think we're going to become, it's going to go the other way. They're going to come up here during the summer and the fall and maybe even the winter. We always joke with the artists when they talk about moving to Appleton. We say, we would love to have you. It's a great thought, but come up here for 3 weeks in January 1st and then decide. You can stay at the band department or the band condo, hang here, play a couple shows, but see if you think you want. So I think you're on the right track. They're going to use us as a second home. This is going to be, this will become their, and it's already happening. It's absolutely happening. And the community, if it wants to, can decide to make it a strategic thing. If they want to hang their hat on and they want to hang their fedora on music, that's going to be ultimately the decision. But we have a long way to go. I would say if we're talking about and I'm not mean long way to go bad. I mean, we have a lot of things we could do that are going to be amazing and going to be really cool and great on the journey to doing that. The beauty of it is there's no pressure to have to be this or to have to be that. The pressure is just to be who we've been already and to just keep doing it, but find new ways to do it. And we can, as I say at Gibson all the time to the team, we can have the Bellwether out of Sheboygan play 5 times a year at Gibson or 6 times a year at Gibson. The shows just have to be a little different each time. And if they're different time, people will love it. We can have Jamie Kent, Matt Slahetka, Dan Rodriguez. They can come back 4 or 5, 6. They may not want to come back all those times because they're thinking careers in a certain way, right? They would love to come back, but they're thinking if I come back that many times, then my shows people are going to get sick of me, whatever it might be, right? But that doesn't have to happen because we can have them back in different ways. Dan and Jamie are coming this week to host the Avenue Christmas show. And we're going to do the after party at Gibson with that, which was a blast last year. They can come back Jamie can come back in February and host the thing. We're talking about doing some stuff February, March, maybe April, kind of this really cool singer-songwriter festival, mini fest kind of thing. He can come back and host that, right? So now there's different ways for them to come back, but be part of the fabric, and that will happen, and they want it to happen. And I think in some cases, if you think about it really even a little differently than that, there'll be a time in here where some of these artists, they were not going to be out there producing on tour all the time. But what they're going to be doing is they're going to still be making records, maybe writing songs at home. They're still going to be, maybe they're not as visible on tour, but now all of a sudden they can say, guess what? My second home is Appleton. I don't really tour anymore. But I can go up to Appleton and I'll play 3 gigs during the course of the year and just get that rush that comes with that, get that validation of being a creative artist and do it right and make a little bit of money, but really have this great connection to Appleton. And I think one of the parts I'm most proud about with the festival and how it's evolved I call it the Houdini fountain phenomenon, and that's that we're different. We're a festival of artists that you maybe don't know, but you should. And we want it to be that way. I think we always wanted to. Now we know that our niche and our niche, for those who pronounce that word both ways, I always throw it in together.
I never know.
I don't want to exclude anybody. But that is really to focus on artists that you don't know, or you should, or you may not know you should, or what I call that are not household names but should be, because they're that talented. To focus on them, because they're the artists that absolutely want to come to Appleton. They know that we're going to treat them well and so forth, and we can afford them, and they can afford to come and spend time with us. And so we're starting to evolve it where artists are coming here for a week and staying at the band apartment or the band condo, and they're playing 2 or 3 shows, and they're doing interviews at the Avenue Radio, and they're doing maybe going into a school and doing some stuff with one of the choirs. That's how we start to evolve it. But they will want to come back here. And the phenomenon with the fountain is, I remember back year 5 or 6, it was the Vagabonds. It wasn't Daniel, the lead guy, but it was all the rest of the band. And I was walking and I saw them standing at the fountain, and they were watching the show at Houdini. And then 2 or 3 fans came by, 2 or 3 gals came by, and they were like, "Hey, we just saw you guys at Jones Park. You guys," or wherever it was, "you guys were amazing. It was awesome. We're coming to your next show, which is at Spats," and the band started talking to them. And I went and had to do something else. I came back. It was 40 minutes later. I came back and they were still standing there talking. And now there were like 11 people standing around them, all listening and all talking. And I remember them sharing, it was maybe the next time they came and played. They played 6 sets when they were here. They played a different set for all 6 sets. Wow. Because they had like 100 fans, they said, that kept going to all the shows, and they felt they needed a different set because they had so many people going to every show. That's just magical.
Absolutely. Those are my favorite bands, Dave. I mean, favorite band is Fish, and that's exactly what they do. They play a different set every night. But one of the bands that I discovered at Mile a couple of years ago, and I would so love to see play 3, 4, 5 nights at Gibson, but Kendall Street. They're a jam band. I just so love those guys. I still follow them on social media, and they're just one of those bands that would just they would play a different set every night. I know they would.
Well, that's interesting, because here's an example. How many people have I talked to? Hundreds, maybe thousands, between the festival, between Gibson, between the other Mile shows we do, between just being a downtown guy. I spend a lot of time downtown. It's really probably my home, more than my home is. My wife would probably tell you that, and she's okay with that, by the way. I talk a lot, so she's perfectly fine with that. She's like, "You just come home for a couple hours, and that's good." But I spend a lot of time downtown at different spaces, and so people come and talk to me. We've had 1,200 artists play the festival, so I've probably had people mention 300 artists to me, right, out of 1,200. It feels like they've mentioned every artist to me that they could have mentioned, but they haven't, and they haven't even come close.
Yeah,
we have so many artists that have played the festival, and the talent is so deep. And I sometimes use the baseball analogy, and we're talking to 2 sports guys too, as well as music guys. But there's AA, there's single A, double A,
sure,
single A, double A, triple A, rookie league, all that sort of stuff, and there's major leagues. So if we're bringing in artists that are at the single A and double A levels, right? You think back to baseball and you see them play for the Timber Rattlers or wherever, and you're going, boy, they're really, really good. And then you see the level of major leagues, and they're really, really, really good. But oftentimes there's not that much difference between them. And it's really just seasoning. It's maybe a couple more years of experience. It's seeing certain situations and so forth. Not unlike the music world, to be honest with you. And I think the bigger thing that happens there is on the sports side of it. You're chasing something specific, and you can kind of get kind of graded as you go, so whether you're going to have a shot or not, right?
It's the exact same thing. I totally agree with that.
But in music, the challenge with music is you don't really get that same grading process. You don't really, it's such a random thing whether you're going to take off or get found, or, and it's so. I think at a certain point they have to say, you know what, I got to do this to make a living, and I still want to do my music. And so we have a lot of those artists, and that's unfortunate. I'd love to see a situation where we were able to find some of the deep pockets in the country, put a bunch of money into a pot and say, we're going to fund these artists to do what they're going to do. And let's create 100 Appletons around the country that these artists all of a sudden now have a chance to just do that. And that becomes their career. Can you imagine how special that would be and how these artists would find that to be the most amazing thing ever? And then you think, what kind of material, what type of content, what type of life-changing stuff would these artists come up with if they could do that at that level and not worry about not worry about this level of success or being Taylor Swift or being whomever, right? Mm-hmm. They could be themselves, but be able to make a living at it. It would be game changing for the arts community within the whole country, because like you said, you started off the whole podcast by saying music creates environment. It inspires, it creates communities,
language.
And, it's language. And if we could do that, it would be pretty special. Well, that's kind of our mantra here in Appleton. We've decided we can do that here in Appleton.
So Dave, we talked about the first few years and how it was a little bit more difficult to get bands. How difficult is it to choose who's playing in these venues now?
It's almost impossible. I mean, we knew about 4 years ago, you could see the headstorm coming. You could see the challenges ahead, in the sense that we feel it's really hard, because we know that we have to say no more than and yes. Just run the numbers. If we have 225, let's say if we have 200 or 250 artists at mile 11, and 125 of them are going to be returning and 125 are going to be new. So now we've had 1,200 play the festival and we're only bringing 125 back. That's 10%.
Yeah.
So we're saying no to 90%. Well, now they're not all out there still doing their thing, but most of them are. The best word I can say is, and we've talked about it between the team, whether it's Ian, who does the bulk of the booking, or it's Melissa on the team, or Kim, my daughter, who works for the company and does all the marketing in the social and sees the comments from the community and from the bands. She's the first one to see all that stuff. And it sucks. That's the word we use, is because we kind of created our own little worst enemy here, in the sense that we can't possibly. So one of the things we can do is start doing more stuff. We can start have them come back and play Appleton. They can play Gibson. They can play Beer Factory. They can play other shows that we're doing. They can play Stone Arch. We're evolving some pretty cool spaces. They come back and they play Ledgestone during the summer. They play it a little. There's some great spots for them to play, and that's only going to continue to evolve and get a little bit better and so forth. As long as everybody's doing it right and treating them right and treating them well. We're going to continue to be this magical place when they come back. But really the idea is to get them to understand that, we're doing our best, and it's going to be really, really tricky to make it happen. There's no formula. We can't. Somebody asked me the other night. They said, "So is the formula?" They were kind of thinking it through, and I'm guessing things start to spread, just like the telephone game. You hear one thing, and then all of a sudden, and they said, "So is the formula that you can play 2 years and then you can't play 3 years in a row?" And I said, I'd like to tell you that we strategically sat down and came up with this amazing formula that says you can only play 2 years and can't play a third year in a row. But no, that the numbers don't support that. There's no way to even pledge to anyone that they can play more than 1 year, right? Because it's a long answer to your question, but the reality is it's a really good problem to have. It's a really good position for the festival to be in, but it also isn't one that makes you feel good, because you know that so many of these great people that I just referred to earlier as amazing humans, that you can't have them back every year, and you can't even sometimes have them back every second year or every third year. So you had a band this year from Madison that played, called the Mascot Theory, that hadn't played the festival, I think, in 4 or 5 years. And there was a year in there or two in there where they couldn't play it because one of the band members was out of town. But ultimately, we're going long stretches, and you feel bad about that. But we'll just keep doing the best we can. The good news about that is we communicate. We try to let everybody know that our tough situation. I think we're going to be a little more just out front about that. We're doing the artist submittal process in the next week or so, and we're really going to just welcome people to submit to play Appleton, not just the festival, but come and play Appleton, and we'll share your information and we'll review these things, and we'll have, because people, they're just excited about coming here because they've heard such great things about the audiences. And I should have said that earlier, but what's made it different is the audiences. And the audiences, not every show is a listening room, not every show is a whatever, but what it is every show is a respect show. Only the music fans who have no idea what we're doing are the ones that aren't following the norm of, I always say if we're doing a listening room, that's obvious. It's a listening room, and we will tell you to be quiet. We'll tap you on the shoulder or we'll walk back and forth with you with the sign that says quiet, please, or listening room. And if we walk past you 6 times, it means it's you. Means it's you. And we've had that happen where it's like, he keeps walking by with that thing. Oh, wait a minute. And we kind of, nod the head like it's you. But not every show is that way. Some shows are completely the opposite, where they're just rocking and everything else, and it's fun, and you can talk and you can do it. And then there's the ones in the middle where it's like, if you're in the middle of the room. I remember my wife and I were at a show. It wasn't a festival show. It was a different show at the Ben Keg one year, and Kyle Magna was playing, and there was a guy in the middle of the room, and he wanted to tell everybody in the world about his day, his work. It was not a good work day, and he wanted everybody to know it. And he happened to find 6 people that he knew, and he was 25 feet from the stage, and we were trying to stand behind him to watch the show. And so if your conversation is more important than the show or louder than the show, and you're trying to overtalk the music, like at Gibson, we'll go over and we'll tap you on the shoulder, and we'll just say, bring it down, because it's not a quiet show. But it's a show we still want you to respect the artist. And that's a piece we have to keep cultivating in Appleton, because that is what they say. Number one is they're starting to talk now about the audiences, and there's something in the water. What do you guys have in the water here? Because we come here, we just want you to know, the artist just said this the other night, so I'll go verbatim. He said, we just want you to know that this, and then I think the gal the next night, the artist said the exact same thing. But they said that this is not the norm everywhere. This is not what we're seeing when we're out on tour. When we come here, we feel validated, we feel accepted, we feel respected. And how cool is that? So I think the respected thing is huge. And the more that our music fans can share that with other people who think they're music fans, but they're really they're music fans, but they want music to be in the background. That's not what we're about. We're, as we've said from day one, we're a music first festival, and we'll always be a music first festival.
Wanted to say is, as a teacher, I play the Mile channel and play a lot of Mile music bands in my classroom we have labs and different things like that. And one of the things that you have helped is my students being out in the community during Mile music and seeing me in the crowd and saying, hey, Mr. Toshner, yeah, you played this band in class, or you were at this. And I always tell them, I said, it's not the music you're going to hear on the radio, but you're going to see some incredible people who love what they do. And I said, that's the biggest thing. If you love what you do and you're going out there, you're going to be a very happy person. And I said, look at all these people. They're happy people up on that stage with the crowds that are around there. And, you're getting high school kids out at Mile of Music as well. And it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, well, that's well said. I mean, and that's a great perspective that I'll take for my future sharing with other people too. But it is that idea that students can learn just from the interact, and I think that's part of it. That interaction is visible. It's palpable. Yeah. It's also very close to you, like the fountain conversations. You're not going to see this band and then you're never going to talk to them. You're never going to be able to text them. You're never going to be able to Instagram them or Facebook them. That's what happens here is connections are created for lifetimes. Right. That's not all stuff that when I got back to the office with the idea in my head, it wasn't like I was thinking all those things, obviously. This is really going to be cool because people are going to be, I didn't necessarily think about experiences are really important if they can be life-changing even for a moment. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think about the life-changing beyond just the moment. That's that. It gets you verklempt. It gets you excited. It gets you, all sappy thinking about it. But it really is the cool part. And I also know that with our student marketing team that we had for a number of years there, they helped launch the festival. They worked on the festival those first years. They ran the bus schedule. They did all kinds of cool stuff. I know that many of them are in marketing now. So on the marketing side, I know that we influence people, which was really cool. You can imagine on the music side, which is a lot more of a sexier thing than the marketing world. But I guess I guess you could probably poke holes at that. But they're probably marketing does stand pretty for what we do with marketing. The idea of substance over flash, the idea of giving something meaningful over it really has been a remarkable journey. And I do every now and then it runs through my head about the number of people who've been impacted, the number of younger people who've been impacted. I think you shared. I appreciate the fact that you are telling them it's more than just being able to play guitar and be up there. It's about creating content and songs and being a creative, but then also how do you treat that fan when you see them after the show? And that's what makes it special. We can count on one hand. I'm definitely no more than two, but I think it's one hand, the number of jerks we've had at the festival within the music. There's been 3,000-4,000 artists that have come to the festival over the 10 years, maybe 5,000. And they're just really good people. And they would be the ones that would talk to that high school student after a show. If the high school student went over and said, hey, what kind of guitar do you play? And why do it? And that's that connection, I guess is the word, is made at Mile, all those connections. And I think that it would be really cool at some point. We do this a little bit at Gibson before some of the shows where we'll have Q&A about the festival and stuff. But I've talked about this, just having a gathering at the chapel sometime and have everybody come in and have a pass around microphone and have everybody talk about their connections they've made at the festival. I think it would be amazing what we'd hear.
Oh yeah.
It'd be incredible. Dave, you talk about like from a marketing student and my son Cooper actually went through your marketing firm program that you do. It happened to be during the COVID year, so it was a little bit different. But, I look at it, the marketing, it's the Mile of Music. That whole thing was created out of marketing, but it's no different than an artist creating a song. It has a life. It evolves year over year. You talk about how Mile is evolving after year 10. I mean, it's no different than a song. The artist plays a song and it changes a little bit over time. What they play this year isn't what they're going to play 10 years from now, even though it's the same song, same concept. And it's the same thing. And I think, my son Cooper, oddly, we talk about that exact same thing, that you can take an event, an idea, and run with it, and it'll morph. And that's just part of the journey. That's the fun part.
I think, and I'll try to keep it shorter. I know I'm giving much longer answers than I'm really allowed to. I think, yeah, there's a podcast protocol that probably says that there's this long and then there's this long, and then it's like, okay, don't ever ask this guy back again. But talking to some of the musicians early on in the festival, but then since then, over the 10 years, there's so many creative artists and so many good artists. And if they can't get to a certain level right away that allows them to spend more time financially to do what they're doing, it's always going to be kind of this additional thing, this hobby thing and so forth. And so it really is a situation where one of the pieces that they don't necessarily have access to is the marketing of it. So the blend of this, of having put artists together with the marketing side to create a brand, that the brand stands for who they are, original artists performing original music. That's been kind of the magic of it. That's been it's been probably the strategic secret sauce behind it, of why it works, is because it is very much that. It takes a few different components to be able to get in front of a lot of people and so forth. And again, the community has been such a huge plus on all this that we can't thank the community enough. The different communities within the community, the sponsors, the in-kind. I always say the true secret sauce of this thing is all the in-kind support we get from so many key partners that people don't have any idea, because we certainly put their logos and everything, but they're not necessarily the financial driving force. But if you had to pay for everything that these folks give us to make the festival happen, all the work that an EPS does that they don't charge us for, all the work that Willems Marketing Events does that we don't charge the festival for, all the work that Fast Signs does, and there's about 40 or 50 in-kind supporters that give us full in-kind. Star Patrol, which is our security, which they're just amazing. I can go on and on and on. That part I learned from my years in town working on events. I knew that generosity was there, but you had to know how to kind of approach it. You had to put something together that was important enough that they felt it was what their contribution would be game changing for the community. We were able to do all that, and that now has become, I refer to it as one of the buckets of the festival. There's financial buckets. There's the sponsorship we pulled together. There's the new nonprofit that now is recruiting donation dollars. There's the money we get during the week of the festival, specifically the 4 days of the festival, by running Jones Park and Houdini, and that's concessions and merchandise and so forth. And then the last bucket has unfortunately been, like me and the firm and others, shortfalling whatever we come short. But the fifth bucket that was in there, and maybe the most important one, is this in-kind bucket, which is probably $1 million of in-kind value out of our $2.5 million festival. And so when other communities approach me, which we get pretty regularly, and say, hey, can you help us start a Mile of Music? Can we start something like it? Can we do our own festival? My answer is, you can, for sure. I know you can. The scale of it, how big it is going to be based completely on the type of community you have, the makeup of your community, and whether you can pull some of those people together to support it. The other piece that's changed, quite frankly, these days, 10 years later, is we had amazing support from the Post Crescent at the start of our festival. They helped us launch the festival as it is, as known. And there isn't really that one media outlet these days that has that kind of attention, right? And so it would be trickier to get something established that way. We were unfortunately moving along before the world of newspaper changed and the media aspects of changing. Radio's not the same, all that kind of stuff. So, we timing wise, we hit it pretty well. I think we could have hit it better had I started it 5 or 10 years earlier. That been a little different, and I probably wouldn't still be texting or podcasting with you from home with my wife in the next. He would have moved on very quickly, I think.
Northeast Wisconsin Sports Advancement, or Noosa, is a nonprofit org where our mission is to raise money, provide support, and bring greater awareness to youth sports organizations in Northeast Wisconsin. We do this primarily through the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet and the Newsa-Cast. Each year, we give back to the community through the Every Kid Plays grant. If you are considering donating or providing support through Noosa, please visit redsmith.org for details. You talk about morphing in the Post Crescent, but I mean, it's a real thing now, right? Your app is what I think is just world class, and I guess just the way you communicate with people through social media. I mean, that whole world has completely changed really in the 10 years that you started this, right?
It has. And so, fortunately we were established. And so then now it's just been kind of putting like some of the frosting on and so forth every year. We have to change the frosting, but the cupcake's kind of there. And I think, I'm glad you've mentioned the app, because both our website provider, Stellar Blue, and our app provider, which started out as known as Skyline Technologies, very prominent in downtown, great people. They have really evolved for us one of the best apps, some of the best online presence between the app and the website and the blogging that we're doing and the social that Kim does. But really that the effort that we're doing with the app is world class. There are festivals that have really redone their apps to be similar to ours. After the very first year they did our app, I think it was the first year, maybe the second year, but I thought it was the first year. They won an award from Microsoft because at the World Conference in Montreal for the app that they did for us. I mean, and they do it in kind. So when we talk about in kind, and I see them all the time because they use Basil's as their conference room B just like we do. And Mark, by the way, Mark from Basil's, Mark Benke, who owns Basil's and owns a number of buildings down, he's the one that gives us the band department that we can use for artists when they come into town. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He's such a great guy.
I said 4 different times, but how cool is that? But that is, each one is kind of as cool as the next. But so you look at this community and what even just happens in Basil's and on the Basil's patio, the Basio every year, the conversations we have. I ran into Melanie from the app provider the other day, and she was there, and we started talking a little bit about next year's app and things. It really is the kind of thing and that's why I say too. When you look at the future and we look at where this is going, and there'll be the actual physical touching of live music with the festival and the other shows, but there's going to be a whole nother component that'll be this opportunity to connect to the artists and to the music and to Kendall Street and to be able to do that if they're interested through our portal to make sure that we have that opportunity to make that happen, and with the idea that it can benefit the artists. And so we're excited about where that can go, and we just have to the honest, being completely honest and forthright, is the next 6 months, the next year, the next 18 months are going to be critical to how that gets done in terms of how we can create a financial model for it that just gets us over the hump. We're not this music industry, what we're doing. The only way it's going to ever be lucrative for someone is if they started it for the purpose of being that purpose, of being lucrative, to being a business, to making money. And when I have to explain to my business advisors, the people who I really appreciate that are great business people who've sold their businesses for millions of dollars and are advising and helping, they struggle with the fact that I didn't start this as a business. I started it as a community thing that is having to learn how to be enough of a business that it can survive. It's a passion project, but it's also more than that. It's a community. It's a community-driven project that was developed to be here for the future. And we just have to figure out how to make sure that happens, because it's a very popular thing.
Yes.
I explained this to the Rolling Stone editor when I talked to him, and it was kind of off the record because that wasn't the angle of the story. But I said, because they were saying, well, how is this possible? How do you do all this stuff? And it's a free festival because no one's doing it. And it's like, well, it's not easy. And it's not a guarantee that it'll be around forever under the current approach, because we have been able to scrape and claw our way to getting it whole every year. Everybody gets paid. Everybody who hasn't been paid is our own firm and stuff. And that has made it difficult. So we're at the point now where it's like, okay, so how do we get this to the next level? And we got a lot of really cool people working on that. But I want people who are listening to the podcast to know too, that we are working on it, but it's also going to take everybody's help, in little ways. And little ways and big ways. We don't expect people who can't afford to support it to support it. We want them to just come to the festival, enjoy it, and support the downtown businesses, buy some food, buy their beverages. That's helping. Then the next level, okay, buy some merch while you're there. That helps us. Then the next level is, maybe get the Music Maker badge, and that really helps us. And the next level will be maybe you adopt an artist for the year and stuff like that. And so we're working on all that, and everybody can stay tuned for where that goes next. But the potential, as coming back to what you said earlier about Austin and Nashville and stuff, we do not. I think we would be wise to not think that we want to be Austin or we want to be Nashville. They all do some amazing things. There's some things that aren't great. What we want to do is just be who we are, but also kind of become known as this oasis for original music from artists, again, who are not household names but should be. And if we stay focused on that, and that artist, that individual, that profile of an artist, I mean, in some ways, that's even cooler than jumping on a bandwagon of a big artist and a big name, whatever, because you're actually helping someone continue to create something, whether they ever become a big name or not. But maybe for the next 20 years, they're continuing to make music because of things like Appleton. And I can tell you, they certainly hold Appleton up as being one of the beacons that they're shooting for.
That's great. I mean, let's be their foundation, right? Let's be that support. How do you deal with mistakes and criticisms? I mean, what do you're sitting at home at night and you got beat up for something that some armchair quarterback could do way better than you. Well, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, not well, but no. I think it's human nature to struggle with some of that. We've had our ups and downs with a few areas since starting the festival. Some of it comes from that trying to stick to the idea that we need to do it for the right reasons. We started the festival. There's 12 mile markers, that we call them. Mile markers are the things that's the purpose for why we do the festival. And it's sometimes hard to stay focused on those 12 things when you have to find $100,000 to make sure everybody gets paid for the last festival. And there's easy answers maybe there. It's like, well, gee, why don't we just start charging, $100 for everybody to come to the festival? It's like, well, okay, it'll change things like I talked about before. So I think the way you deal with it, I think for the most part, we have a strong team that we can share and talk to each other about. But I really do think it's we get so much love from the community. We get so many accolades from the community that you draw upon those. I can draw upon our Gibson shows Saturday, our Gibson shows Friday, and we just had Chris Gold's toy drive on Saturday. What a cool event. I mean, just an awesome event. 80, 90, 100 people there over the course of the evening, bringing toys in the whole front area. So you draw upon the positives and all the great things that happen around music. And I remind myself all the time, I say, we got this obstacle to overcome, or we have this we got to do. But wait a minute, but we have 10 years of a festival behind it that people enjoy and like. So let's focus on that. Let's make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that this is being done for the right reasons. And I can tell you that I welcome anybody in the community who ever wants to talk to me, who thinks they know what the truth is about something, or thinks they know that this happened or that happened, or they think that they know. I think our biggest obstacle right now, for example, is I think people think we're making money hand over fist. They think that we're raking it in because it's such a popular festival, right? But that could not be further from the truth. We've invested and reinvested everything into it. So now, whether that's smart, it's not. Whether it's a great business model, it's not. That's what it has been. But we'll change that. But the reality is, just because someone's sitting back thinking that we're doing that doesn't mean we are. And so I think it's important that people understand that the door is open. If they want to talk, they can find me. I'm not really on Facebook, but I'm around. I'm at Gibson on a regular basis. Go onto the website and type into info@Mile of Music and send me an email. Send us an email. Say, hey, this email's for Dave. Seriously. And I'll be happy to meet you for a cup of coffee. I've done this multiple times with people who have questions or concerns about something. Let's meet at one of the coffee shops downtown for a cup of coffee and talk about, and I'll take the questions, because when you're doing something for genuine reasons, when you're doing something for the right reasons, you don't really have anything to hide. And we certainly don't have anything to hide. So I'd be more than happy to have people come and talk to us. We've been very outspoken about the fact that we're going to need financial support. I think the best way I can describe it, and we'll go back to the sports analogy that we started out talking about sports and music. I think we as a company and we as a team have taken the ball about as far as we can go with it. We've done about everything we can do at the festival. We've shown what an amazing festival can look like. Mile 5, Mile 7, Mile 9, they all get Mile 10. They all got, as great as everybody thought Mile 10 was, Mile 9 got the exact same scores on our survey after the festival. Mile 7 got the exact same scores. I leave 8 out of it because that was a bit of an anomaly after the pandemic. But they've all gotten these amazing ratings and reviews, and that's a testament to everybody who helps make the festival happen. So it's not just our team or not just me or whatever, it's the whole thing. But that's what we're shooting for. That is exactly what we're shooting for, and it's going to continue to get done in different ways, but we're going to need the community's help. And we've taken the ball as far as we can probably go with it financially, and now it's going to be a matter of let's see how we can make the next 10 years happen a little bit different. We're not talking about a crazy amount of money anyway, so it really is fine-tuning things, getting it to step up to the next level, wanting to the beauty of this too, guys, is we don't have to do it's not like we're sitting here going, gosh, to be a really good festival, we got to take it to here. It can stay right where it is with just some tweaks. Every year has to have different wrinkles. It has to look different every year. It has to be fresh in some ways. But I think people love it the way it is. So it's not like we all of a sudden have to go back to having 70 venues or 60 venues. We have 33 or 34 music venues. We have another 6 or 7 venues for experiences. So like 40 venues. We don't have to change that. Somehow we've been very lucky and fortunate. We've been very careful. We've slow played the publicity. We couldn't say no to Rolling Stone, obviously. But we've slow played the publicity. So my fear was always, if we had twice as many people show up for the festival, now you've got lines out the door at 2 p.m, not just at 8 o'clock at night. And so somehow we've been able to get lucky at that. We've been able to keep the size of the festival almost the same, almost static. And there were more people there, I think, last year on Friday and Saturday. There were maybe a few less people on Thursday. And then Sunday's always such a crazy, weird wild card. It's just never the same from year to year. So we think we're going to do some fresh stuff on Sunday, some wrinkles. We're going to add a family component on Sunday to one of the stages with original music, but it will be from family artists for the original music. We're going to probably add some busking next year. As you're making your way down the festival, you'll see artists performing. And it comes back to what you alluded to before, which was it really is a music in unexpected places. It's trying to create music in spots. The pop-up shows we did last year with Bose in the hotel people loved them. I mean, it's always great to see that phenomenon where there's 11 people standing around Megan Slankard singing at the hotel, and by the time she's done, there's 110. I mean, it's just such a great phenomenon to see. We want to do more of that for sure. We're going to probably take some of the vintage vans out, the VW buses. We're going to probably do some pop-ups, pull up with the band jumps out, artist jumps out, starts playing. It's just going to be some cool stuff that's going to add, so you're not ever sure what you're going to see next.
Some of the greatest experiences I've had at Mile have just simply been walking down the sidewalk and some dude is strumming his guitar and people are around him. Things like that. That's what, to me, that's every bit of Mile. And, you talked about the app as well. And I wanted to just say one more thing about that. That has become every bit about the experience for me is that app. I mean, it's one of my favorite parts of Mile is literally the week before Mile, I'll sit down on my back porch and I'll sit through that app and I'll plan out my shows. I want to catch these, and I never hold to that schedule, but at least it's a framework. And I just so love that it's become a true part of the experience.
It really has. No, there's no question about it. And we were right there at the beginning. I think we had one of the best apps early on. I mean, obviously there were other festivals that had apps before us, but we didn't have an app the first year. We did not have an app the first year. And so, and it was, and to their credit, I'm pretty sure at the time they were called Skyline Technologies, but they approached us to come and do the app, and they were excited because they were music fans, and that goes a lot of times. The tech folks are also music fans, and so they were tech fans who were music fans, and there was a Basil's connection, and they basically said, "We'd love to do your app." It was John Potasic. If you know the name John Potasic, John is a huge music fan, and he approached and said, "I think our team would like to do your app." And fortunately, I knew what an app was. I was still pretty old then, it was 10 years ago, but I was still pretty old. But I knew what an app was, being in the marketing world. And I said, I didn't hesitate for a second. I said, we would love that. And then by the second year we had it, And had we not had one the second year, I guarantee you we would have had a lot of people coming out and saying, what the hell's wrong with you guys? You don't have an app? That kind of thing. So it was just, the timing was perfect. We had an app by the second year. And not only did we have an app, it was pretty darn good to start with. I remember when we had John at the end of the second year, the song Before We Go on the stage at the chapel, we brought him over. And when he mentioned that he was with Skyline Technologies and they had done the app, the crowd went crazy. So, I mean, he was like taken aback. I had a tear in my eye because I was so happy for him and so happy for the team there. And they've met, some of those same people are still working with us. And it's a game changer. It was a game changer for us for sure. But there's so many of those types of folks, dozens of the in-kind people that have helped to make the festival happen. And like I said, if you don't have those, we wouldn't. I don't think we'd have a festival right now, because how do you replace that $1 million of support? You can't.
Yeah.
Fast Signs doing all of the banners, all the signage for us, which is critical for our sponsors and stuff. And to do that and to be such a great community partner, it's monumental.
I don't know if that's special to our area or not, but there's so many great people in this area.
Before we end and stuff, I just wanted to shout out your daughter too, because she does an amazing job on the social media. And is an East grad too, so hey, got to shout her out.
She thinks you're great too, and she, the amount of times we hear from our kids about how great the Appleton East teachers were. Well, actually, no, that's never happened. No, I'm just kidding. The amount of times we hear is just it's on a regular basis, and it's been 12, 13 years since they've been. But it happens all the time, and it just so happens and I think it's true of the other high schools too. I just don't know them as well, but there's a core group of teachers and educators at East that are also Mile fans and music fans that have kind of been on the journey with us. Because Kim was a freshman in college when was it freshman? No, second year in college, sophomore, junior in college when we started it, and she ran the social from down in college, and she did all. It was really neat. I remember we did the announcement of the festival that first year from the Outer Edge. And she was at Milwaukee, UW Milwaukee, running stuff down at UW Milwaukee. That was really, when you think about it, she wasn't even there, but she was such a key part of things, and she had ever since. And so, and there's a lot of people like Kim that aren't my kids, aren't my daughter, that are doing similar things for the festival that have been supportive. Festival, Gibson, other music venues locally, yeah, I would say to folks who are listening in, stay tuned, because there's just some really cool stuff coming up. And if you can help us, great, but help us just by supporting, saying good things, coming to the shows. That's all helping a lot and making a big difference. And even just coming to Gibson for a show and paying the $10 or $15 admission, but to see an amazing show, that makes a world of difference and helps us too.
Gibson's is such a great place to see a show. I mean, Tosh and I don't know if you're aware, Diggstown does all the music for the Newsa-Cast. I mean, that was one of the very first things that we wanted, was good music on the Newsa-Cast. Even before sports was the music for us. One last question for you is just, the event's over, you successful night. What's your nightcap like? How do you unwind? What's the night the event's over with? How do you unwind? And then consequently, what's the next day like? You wake up the next morning. What do you feel? What's that day like?
My wife just walked over. She goes, "Don't tell him the truth." No,
we want the truth, Dave.
Oh no, it's actually what she was saying. What she just said. No, what I was saying was you don't unwind. So
but that's real, I'm sure.
Well, and it's not just me, but I mean, it is part of the nature of the beast. You're kind of moving on to the next thing right away and so forth. I did just tell someone recently, I said, the thing I'm not good at, even like with Gibson, with the shows and stuff, I'm not good at living in the moment, not good at taking a step back and saying this, okay, that can wait. Let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy this moment. Got to get better at that. I think I'd like for our team to be able to have that experience better, because they've put so much into it, and it really hasn't been fair to them over the journey that we've had to take such a tough stretch of trying to just scrape by and get everything done. So I really would like to get to the point where everybody benefits from the work that they've done. we do jump into the next thing right away. We always have stuff going on. Like there's always shows the next week at Gibson. There's shows, and next year we're hoping to do some regular stuff throughout the summer besides just the Wednesday Courtyard series that we do, which is an awesome series. But we hope to do some other things and potentially Houdini Plaza and some other stuff. So, for me, it's going to sound really, really like I'm making it up, but for me, the unwinding part is probably just really being able to grab my notebook and go and hang out on the porch at Wooden Nickel, or go on the patio behind Basil's and have a beverage and have some lunch and sit and just think about where this can go and brainstorm on the next event. And we're putting together the idea of a Famous in Appleton festival, a spin-off festival that would be really playing off of Jamie's Famous in Appleton song. But the idea that all these artists feel like they're famous in Appleton and bringing those artists back, it's another way for us to have the artists who we can't bring back every year to the festival, have them come back and play another really cool thing. And so it's sitting down, writing ideas like that helps me unwind a little bit. It helps me kind of think about, the good aspects of what we've been able to create.
Can I guess at one other moment that you may take in some enjoyment? And that would be, I always like just observing you at certain events, and Mile for sure. And there's always seems to be a moment where you're kind of always maybe in the background, but you sort of take in whatever it is, just somebody's set or whatever. But you sort of seem to take in that moment. Maybe it's only for 5 minutes, but is there moments like that where you do actually, that's sort of the high? It's like, oh yeah, we're kind of pulling this off, or maybe it's one of those things where you're pumping your brain full of, we can do 10 of these things better in that moment.
No, it is that for sure. No, there is some of that, and it does. And the last couple of years of the festival, trying to position myself a little more in a spot like at the hotel where I can float to multiple places. I can talk to artists. I can talk to fans. I can glean information, but at the same time, I can take a moment I take a moment to enjoy Megan Slanker's pop-up, but then I ended up having to kind of block people off from coming through because they had to walk around. So because Bose was filming, you had a film crew in, they were filming, and otherwise they would have walked right in front of them. So I didn't end up working it, but it was working it in a good way. But sitting down in like the ballroom and watching Buffalo Rose performing, or sitting down certainly at first songs and enjoy, and so forth. But I usually try to get down to Houdini Plaza and watch I always try to catch snippets of shows. Lawrence Lawn this past year, because we're trying to evolve that into an even bigger and better location. I didn't get a chance to get down to Emmett's or Spats to that end of the avenue at all this year in the festival. I mean, think about that. When you guys know that you're trying to juggle everything and get to as much music as you can, and you think you stop back. Nancy Krieger, who heads up the Appleton Community Music Board right now, the nonprofit, she says all the time, she says, you're at the festival and you think you're seeing a lot of it. You think you're seeing a lot of it, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, I'm at one show and there's 4 other shows going on right now.
It's impossible to see everything.
I'm at one show and I'm at the 513 and I'm having this amazing moment at the 513. But I'm still missing. I'm only getting to, 3% of the festival at that point. So I do try to do that, Joe. I try to get to spots. I try to pick and choose spots where I can go and hang out for maybe 2 or 3 songs and just really soak it in and enjoy it. Yeah.
That's good to hear. No, it's you need those moments. I think that's the fuel to keep you going.
No doubt.
For sure.
No doubt at all.
Thank you for listening to the Newsa-Cast. We'd really appreciate it if you hit up our social pages, subscribe, like, follow, and don't be afraid to engage. Head over to our YouTube channel to get exclusive content like the full interviews and speeches from the past Red Smith banquets.
Carry on the tradition and services of the Red Smith Sports Award banquet that was held in Appleton for 57 years. The banquet has raised over $1 million for youth sports in the area during that time, and as we work up to a live event again, we have developed the Newsa-Cast podcast. Through conversations, we highlight the stories right here from our own backyard. And just like at the Red Smith banquet, we highlight the youth of our area, the coaches, the schools, and even local influencers that make our community great. If you would like to help us continue our mission, please head over to redsmith.org to donate. The music you heard in this episode was Diggstown, a band right here in Northeast Wisconsin. Catch a gig, find them on Spotify, or go to diggstownrocks.com. Produced by Polywave Studios.